Su Zimo stepped out of the room. Congratulations, young Master Su, on breaking through to the Creation God stage. Endless life, creation renewed. The Light Lord Sage Monarch said. It's still far from enough. Just the Creation God stage. Su Zimo replied with a wave of his hand. Primordial Flame had already left. Or rather, after handing Su Zimo the 4 items, he had gone into seclusion. For him, the path towards eternal life was everything. The 4 items, one of which, the Enlightenment Stone, Su Zimo had already used, left 3 others. The first was a small vial filled with blood. The liquid dyed the entire bottle red. When held, it felt strangely light. Su Zimo knew that this true god blood was priceless. It was only the bottle's peculiar nature that hid its true weight. The second item was a token from the Nangua god clan. According to Primordial Flame, the Nangu ancestor had given it to the enlightened spirit ancestor ages ago after being saved by him. Anyone who showed this token would be treated as if the ancestor himself were present. It was a favor that had never been used, and now ended up in Su Zimo's hands. The 4th item, naturally, was the inheritance of Rushu, the ancient metal god. The inheritance was a lump of gold. At first glance, it looked completely ordinary, but once spirit energy flowed into it, the gold instantly expanded to an enormous size, releasing waves of divine aura. This was God's gold, a material long extinct. It was said that only the ancient metal god Rushu could forge gold infused with divinity. Once it had expanded, Su Zimo saw that the inheritance text was carved across the entire mountainside of this golden mass. The golden mountain glowed brilliantly, exuding sharp, overwhelming force. In the 5 elements, metal represented indestructibility. It wasn't as violent as fire, nor as adaptable as water. Metal was pure sharpness, ultimate destruction. Su Zimo decided to rest for a day before handling the inheritance of the ancient metal god. After speaking briefly with the Light Lord Sage Monarch and the others, Su Zimo sought out Shangguan Xian, Realm Lord Bai, and the Violet Mist Saint Sovereign. Young Master Su, they greeted him. They had been waiting for him since everything ended. What are your plans now? Su Zimo asked. I'm the same as before, Bai replied. I want to rebuild ancient eternal god realm and restore my ancestors' glory. Fair enough. You gained a lot this time. Once you return home and cultivate in seclusion, your strength should rise several levels, Su Zimo said. I'll speak with the Radiant Court and have them remove the threat of the Fire Python Holy Lands for you. Thank you, young master. Realm Lord Bai immediately fell to his knees. The Fire Python Holy Lands were a deadly enemy to them. But to a force like the Radiant Court, it was nothing but an ant that could be crushed with a flick of the wrist. Su Zimo waved dismissively and turned to Shangguan Xian. My life's purpose has always been to avenge my mother and destroy the Shangguan Heavenly Clan, Shangguan Xian said. And that wish is about to be fulfilled, Su Zimo replied. This time, the Shangguan Heavenly Clan lost the 5 elements Saint Sovereign and Shangguan Wanner. And because of Shangguan Xiongba's foolish decision, the Divine Crow God realm sided with the wrong faction. The Radiant Court will definitely settle accounts with them. How they would settle it was obvious. It wasn't about destroying the entire fire region. They would simply eliminate the Shangguan Heavenly Clan and appoint a new force to govern it. Simple. If you don't listen, you get replaced. Yes, Shangguan Xian sighed deeply. From now on, I'll travel the Inferno Crucible Heaven and focus on cultivation. In the years since I left the Shangguan Heavenly Clan, I've visited many places, but hatred clouded my heart. That's fine too, Su Zimo said with a smile. Life's short. Being happy matters most. He turned to the Violet Mist Saint Sovereign. And you? I followed you from the God-fiend Abyss Heaven all the way here, he said with a smile. But I don't think I'll leave. The Radiant Court wants to recruit me. I'll probably stay as a guest elder. I truly hope we'll meet again in the future, my friend. Su Zimo nodded. What about you, young master? Shangguan Xian asked. I'm guessing he'll head to the Absolute God Heaven, Violet Mist Saint Sovereign said. Your steps grow firmer with each move, and you never stop. ordinary people like us can't begin to understand. Yes, I'm going to the absolute God heaven, Su Zimo said, looking up at the sky. A lot of things aren't what I want, but they're also what I must do. Tired? Shang Guanxian asked suddenly. Su Zimo let out a quiet sigh. Along his journey, he had met countless people and experienced countless events, good and bad, and sometimes he wanted nothing more than to rest for a moment. But he knew better. Missions sounded mystical, but in truth, the enemies behind him never stopped pushing him forward. As long as that damned heaven refused to die, he would never have peace. Su Zimo smiled faintly and clasped his hands toward the three. We part ways today. I hope your futures are smooth and peaceful. Flowers bloom again. People meet again. They bowed to one another, then went their separate ways. Su Zimo returned to his room. He spent the entire day doing nothing, simply adjusting his emotions and restoring himself to peak condition. The next day, he began accepting the inheritance of Rushu. The god's gold floated in the air, releasing sharp golden light that exploded outward. Metal, indestructible and keen, radiated its nature fully. The characters engraved on the god's gold peeled off one by one, forming a complete inheritance technique called Heaven-Severing God Metal. From now on, all of Su Zimo's attacks would carry boundless sharpness, the overwhelming force of metal itself. He sat cross-legged. His clothes tore apart under the razor edge of the ancient god metal Dao. His skin split open without him noticing. But Su Zimo didn't move. He didn't feel pain. This was the baptism of the ancient god metal Dao. While comprehending the essence of heaven-severing god metal, he was also absorbing the divinity within the god's gold. No one knew how much time passed. Su Zimo's body had become mangled and bloody. Then his entire body trembled. A wave of green power surged through him, healing all his wounds instantly. Su Zimo opened his eyes. Golden sharpness burst forth, tearing open the space ahead of him. This was the power of the ancient god metal Dao. But what he valued wasn't merely the ancient god metal Dao itself. He already possessed metal primal Dao. It was that Rushu's inheritance had pushed his Dao comprehension to its limit. Just like all the other ancient gods, he now held an ancient god's Dao, the apex of metal. Su Zimo slowly stood. Everything was ready. He knew it was time to leave. Su Zimo walked out of the room. He took a long breath, letting the aura around him settle. The sharp metallic force slowly withdrew. He looked around and found the Light Lord Sage Monarch. Traveling from the Inferno Crucible Heaven to the Absolute God Heaven was something only the Radiant Court could accomplish. Crossing from one domain to another wasn't as simple as tearing through space. Su Zimo had already experienced this when crossing the previous domains. When does young Master Su intend to leave? The Light Lord Sage Monarch asked. Today, Su Zimo said with a smile. Everything is wrapped up. There's no reason for me to stay. To reach the Absolute God Heaven, our Radiant Court does indeed have a method. To be honest, the Inferno Crucible Heaven and the Absolute God Heaven have been connected for a very long time, the Light Lord Sage Monarch said. But there are a few things I need to make clear. Su Zimo nodded and listened quietly. A long time ago, an emperor from your small world, the Primordial Heartlands, ascended here. He was just like you, climbing through the 9 heavens, aiming for their highest tier. His title was True Martial Saint Sovereign, said the Light Lord Sage Monarch. I met him back then. He had just stepped into the Saint Sovereign realm and wasn't very strong yet. Su Zimo froze. Of all things, was fate truly this coincidental? The True Martial Saint Sovereign, that was the founder of his own true martial sacred ground, Grand Emperor Jinwu. After Grand Emperor Jinwu created the sect, he bore the heaven's will and left. After that, the sect produced 3 more emperors: Grand Emperor Sandao, Grand Empress Hongtian, and Grand Emperor Xinxing. Since arriving in the 9 heavens, this was the first time Su Zimo had heard news about his ancestors. Young Master Su, what's wrong? The Light Lord Sage Monarch asked. Nothing, Su Zimo said, regaining his composure. Go on. When I met True Martial Saint Sovereign, he wasn't strong. but he had a bold and carefree personality. He stayed in the Inferno Crucible Heaven for a while, and we became close friends. He once joked that when he reached the Absolute God Heaven, he would build a passage connecting it to our domain and bring the true martial sacred ground up here to stand alongside the Radiant Court. Su Zimo couldn't help but smile. And then, that's when things got interesting, the Light Lord Sage Monarch replied. I thought he was bragging, but the amazing part is, every boast he made came true. When he first entered the Absolute God Heaven, he was barely a new Saint Sovereign. But after a few hundred years, the true martial Saint Sovereign had become famous throughout the Absolute God Heaven. Even the 10 God clans treated him with respect. And the true martial sacred ground he established quickly grew into a force capable of competing with the 10 God clans. But the good times didn't last. I don't know the details, only that the true martial sacred ground was eventually wiped out. What? Wiped out? Su Zimo frowned. Yes, I don't know how or why. We're in the Inferno Crucible Heaven, tens of billions of miles away, the Light Lord Sage Monarch said. And no one from the Radiant Court has gone to the Absolute God Heaven in ages. Our teleportation formation linked to the true martial sacred ground hasn't been used in a long time. With the sect destroyed, we don't even know if the formation is still stable. If you choose to travel there, I can't guarantee the formation won't malfunction. He paused before adding, there is a safer route into the Absolute God Heaven, but it's much more troublesome. No need. I'll take the formation directly to the true martial sacred ground, Su Zimo said, shaking his head. It was his sect. No matter what remained, he had to see it for himself. He had to find out what happened, and what became of the sect's old patriarchs. If young Master Su insists, I won't stop you, the Light Lord Sage Monarch said. I'll have people prepare the formation. Su Zimo nodded. Because the formation had been unused for so long, Su Zimo waited in the Radiant Court until late afternoon before the Light Lord Sage Monarch returned, saying everything was ready. Su Zimo followed him to the back mountain of the Radiant Court. The area was barren, clearly having been cleaned only recently. Su Zimo sensed the surrounding space was embedded with spirit crystals. This was a large-scale formation. Activating it would consume an enormous amount of crystals. The formation activated, and countless crystals released a powerful surge of energy. At its center, a circular formation appeared. Su Zimo stood within it. A powerful force twisted the surrounding space. The spirit crystals all exploded instantly, turning to dust. Su Zimo was swallowed by the warped space and pulled into temporal transit. He didn't resist, and he noticed something else. The higher he climbed within the 9 heavens, the stronger the spatial resistance became. When he ascended from the Mortal Ascension Heaven to the Ghost God Heaven, it was manageable. But when he moved from the God-Fiend Abyss Heaven to the Inferno Crucible Heaven, he was nearly crushed and had to spend a long time recovering. Now, he had no idea what awaited him. The long stretch of temporal travel was dazzling and violent. His body was constantly torn apart by the void. Time passed, he had no idea how long. Eventually, he felt his physical body ripped completely apart, leaving only his soul and the life-death soul intact. The tree of life's power continued supporting him. More time passed. Finally, the tearing sensation faded. His consciousness was still hazy, but he began to recover. At the former site of the true martial sacred ground, a great destruction had once taken place. After the ruin, a new true martial sect was built here. But to stay low-key, they called it the True Martial Sect, not the True Martial Sacred Ground. Even so, the new sect was only a third-rate force. Its strongest member was a god Meridian cultivator whose lifespan was nearly exhausted. Today was the sect's ancestral Memorial Day. It was dedicated to honoring the sect's former patriarchs. Sect Master Wang Hengji led the elders and dozens of disciples to the ancestral burial grounds. Even at a glance, there were at least 1,000 graves. The disciples began preparing offerings, while Wang Hengji and the core elders stood at the front, looking out at the mere 30 disciples remaining. He sighed. To think that the true martial sacred ground once stood in unmatched glory, revered by all directions. Who would have thought it would fall into decline in our hands? Sect Master, you shouldn't blame yourself, a core elder said. If not for our late ancestor guiding you, the true martial line would have been wiped out completely. The fact that we've survived at all is a miracle. At that moment, a shout came from nearby. Sect Master, there's a corpse here. When the disciple shouted, Sect Master Wang Hengji frowned slightly. This was the ancestral tomb area. If a body appeared here, could it be an ancestor? Wang Hengji didn't dare be careless and immediately hurried forward. Beside one of the tombs lay a young man. Of course, no one would assume he was truly young. Many ancestors kept the appearance they had in their youth. Check him. Is he still breathing? Someone asked. I'll examine him myself, Wang Hengji said. He knelt down and felt for the youth's aura. Spirit energy shifted around him, a faint blue glow wrapping Su Zimo's entire body. He's still breathing, Wang Hengji called out excitedly. He poured all his spirit energy into Su Zimo, trying to heal him. But compared to Su Zimo, his energy was nothing more than a drop in the ocean, completely swallowed without effect. Before long, Wang Hengji's face turned pale from exhaustion. When he stood up, he swayed and nearly collapsed. Sect Master! A disciple rushed forward to support him. Is he one of our ancestors? Someone asked cautiously. I don't know, Wang Hengji replied, shaking his head. I can't even tell whether he's truly alive or dead. He frowned. His life force is there, but he won't wake up. It's like he's trapped in a deep sleep. What do we do? An elder asked. We don't know if he's friend or foe. If he's an evildoer and we save him, the true martial sect could be finished. That won't happen. He appeared in the ancestral tomb of the true martial sacred ground. I believe he's someone connected to us, Wang Hengji said. Bring him back with us. He gestured toward a young woman in the distance. Lin Yu, I'll leave this fellow Taoist in your care. He had wanted to call him an ancestor, but he didn't know his identity, so fellow Taoist was safer. The woman he addressed, Deng Linyu, was the sect's saintess. Master, you want me to take care of him? She said, startled. She eyed the unconscious Su Zimo, her expression full of reluctance. But I need to cultivate. I don't have time to look after him. That's an order, Wang Hengji said sharply. Deng Linyu pouted, eyes glossy with grievance. Wang Hengji rubbed his temples. He had spoiled this disciple far too much and now couldn't control her. Niece Deng doesn't need to force herself, the Grand Elder said with a placating smile. This man's identity is unknown. We don't even know if he belongs to our sect. Why not choose someone else? Master, I'll take care of him, a soft voice said. Everyone turned. It was Xiao Anin, the Grand Elder's personal disciple. The Grand Elder nearly coughed up blood. His own granddaughter had undercut him in an instant. Sect Master, since Anin is willing, let her take the responsibility, Lin Yu said. Sect Master, the girl is talking nonsense, the Grand Elder said with a stiff smile. I'm not talking nonsense, Xiao Anin said quietly, her eyes fixed on the unconscious youth. I don't know why, but he feels familiar, close even. The Grand Elder's expression crumpled into helplessness. She was not only his disciple but his granddaughter. He couldn't scold or punish her even if he wanted to. I'm done with this, he muttered and left with a flick of his sleeve. Wang Hengji chuckled. He ordered a wheelchair to be built and had Su Zimo placed onto it. Xiao Anin stayed at his side. If you need anything, just ask. The sect will support you, Wang Hengji told her. Xiao Anin nodded shyly. She was quiet, reserved, and clearly not talkative. I don't need anything, she said softly. Wang Hengji left to oversee the ancestor worship ceremony. After he departed, Deng Linyu approached Xiao Anin. Anin, are you stupid? We don't even know who he is. What if he stays paralyzed forever? Are you going to take care of him for life? Don't waste your future. I'll go talk to Master. It's fine, Xiao Anin said softly, shaking her head. I don't know why, but he feels familiar. I'll take care of him for now. If he really stays like this forever, then I'll take care of him forever. You silly girl. Don't regret it later, Deng Linyu sighed. Meanwhile, Wang Hengji had ordered the disciples to prepare the offerings before the thousands of ancestral graves. The true martial sect had completely declined. Only a few thousand disciples remained. But they were loyal and united, with little conflict among them. The atmosphere was warm despite the sect's fall. Wang Hengji walked to one particular grave, a small, inconspicuous one among many. It belonged to Wang Qianhe, Elder Qianhe. His strength and seniority were not impressive compared to the other ancestors, but he was the one Wang Hengji respected most, because he was the only master he had personally known. He placed the offerings, lit incense, and knelt. Master, you always sighed back then, telling me how glorious the true martial sacred ground once was. I've struggled so hard to rebuild the true martial sect, but everything is difficult. Forget restoring our glory, I don't even know how long we can survive. If you can hear me in the afterlife, please watch over the sect. He rose to leave. Then the sound of drums echoed from the direction of the sect. Wang Hengji's expression changed instantly. That drum was only struck when the sect was facing an enemy. What happened? An elder said, frowning. Quick! Go check if we're under attack. The disciples whispered anxiously. Wang Hengji took the lead and hurried toward the sect entrance. Behind him, Xiaoanin pushed the wheelchair carrying Su Zimo. I'll help you, Deng Linyu said as she turned around. Seeing that Xiaoanin was moving too slowly, she reluctantly stepped forward and pushed the wheelchair herself, quickly heading toward the sect gate. When they arrived at the gate, they saw a massive divine dragon ship hovering in the sky. The vessel floated in the void, exuding waves of draconic might, its dragon head looking almost alive as it faced true martial sect. I don't know why the ancient dragon god empire has come here today, Wang Hengji said, his face changing slightly when he saw the ship. What business do you have with us? He understood immediately that the other side hadn't come with good intentions. A figure stepped down from the dragon ship, walking through the air. He wore a golden dragon robe, though strictly speaking, the embroidery was only of a flood dragon. True dragon robes could only be worn by the grand emperors of the ancient dragon god empire. 2 horns grew from the man's head, marking him as someone with dragon blood and not a human. He stood in the air, his aura rippling around him with thunderous booms. His eyes shone with draconic authority as he spoke. People of true martial sect, it's time to pay your protection fee. Didn't we just pay a few months ago? Wang Hengji replied. We agreed it was once a year. The so-called protection fee was humiliating. Ever since the destruction of the former true martial sacred ground, the land that had once been a celestial treasure ground, rich with energy nearly turning into substance, had been ruined. It was said someone drained the celestial veins, leaving behind a wasteland. Wang Hengji brought the disciples here to rebuild true martial sect, but by then the ancient dragon god empire had already claimed this region as its territory. They harassed the sect endlessly, forcing Wang Hengji to pay protection just to stop the trouble. At the peak of the old true martial sacred ground, the ancient dragon god empire wouldn't have even been qualified to carry their shoes, let alone extort them. Only the 10 god clans would have had the authority to speak with them. But now the fallen tiger was being bullied. The airborne man sneered. We set the rules for the protection fee. It is now collected monthly. A monthly payment? Where would we get that kind of money? Wang Hengji trembled with anger. You're pushing us too far. No money? Then leave this land. That's your problem, not ours, the man said flatly. Will you pay or not? If not, you'll be expelled today. Ocean Dragon Prince, you're doing this on purpose. Wang Hengji snapped, realizing the man had come spoiling for trouble. Yes, I came to cause trouble. What of it? Ocean Dragon Prince said arrogantly. This land belongs to the ancient dragon god empire. I'll handle it however I want. Wang Hengji tried to speak again, but a nearby elder stopped him. Sect Master, don't be impulsive. Their grand sorcerer, Situ, could destroy us alone. True martial sect was weak now, so weak that anyone could bully them. Their strongest, Elder Changlu, was only at the God Meridian realm. He had once fought Situ and was defeated, and now, with his life nearing its end, he remained sealed away. No one knew how long he had left. If he died, the sect would be in even greater danger. Perhaps extinction. Trying to calm Wang Hengji down, the second elder stepped forward and said with a forced smile, "Ocean Dragon Prince, we will pay. But can you give us some time? I'm not unreasonable." 3 days, Long Hai said. "If you don't hand over the money in 3 days, get out. If you don't leave, I'll kill you." He jumped back onto the dragon ship. The massive vessel roared and shot through the void, vanishing from sight. Once they were far out of view, Ocean Dragon Prince returned inside the ship with a sycophantic smile and approached a black-robed figure sitting cross-legged in a corner. Though the man didn't release any overt pressure, simply sitting there made him feel like the center of the world, radiating an invisible oppression. Ocean Dragon Prince tiptoed toward him. "My lord," I told them. 3 days. Either they pay or they're gone." The black-robed man nodded slightly. With a casual flick of his hand, a genuine dragon scale flew toward Ocean Dragon. "Your reward." Ocean Dragon Prince bowed repeatedly, accepted the scale, and retreated. When he was gone, the robed figure slowly raised his head. His features were youthful and handsome, looking no older than 20, completely at odds with the depth and stillness he radiated. He produced an incense burner and lit 3 sticks. As smoke curled upward, the void twisted, revealing 3 more black-robed figures. "How's the situation, Qilian?" one asked. "I've already begun investigating Xingliang," the man replied. The 3 figures, all wearing black robes that hid their faces, murmured among themselves. One sounded like an old man. "Last night, the stars shone unusually bright. True martial sacred ground has been destroyed for so long, yet I've never seen that kind of omen. Can a dead sect revive itself? Don't forget, the item still hasn't been found," one of them said. "Or maybe that thing was never with the true martial sect to begin with," another argued. "Or someone took it before the destruction. No matter what, this time true martial sect must be wiped out completely. Not a single root left behind. But before that, we must locate the item. Don't kill everyone at once. Someone may know a lead." Their debate continued until the incense-lighting young man cut them off. "Enough. I'll infiltrate true martial sect myself. Give me 3 months. If I still haven't found anything, we'll end this by force." "Fine, Qilian. Don't disappoint us." Their forms vanished as the incense went out. The young man stored the burner away and sat motionless like a meditating monk. Inside true martial sect, the atmosphere was filled with anger. "This is outrageous. We should just fight them. Don't be reckless. Staying alive matters more. Think about a solution first." "What solution? Where are we supposed to get the protection fee? Should we borrow from the Sage Heaven God Empire?" When the name Sage Heaven God Empire was mentioned, the elders fell silent. Back when the true martial sacred ground was at its peak, the Sage Heaven God Empire and true martial sect were bound by marriage. The empire's princess had married their sacred lord. The 2 powers were truly like family. But times changed too quickly. For reasons unknown, true martial sacred ground was destroyed, and the Sage Heaven God Empire kept its distance, severing all ties with the newly rebuilt true martial sect. "Who's going to the Sage Heaven God Empire to borrow money?" an elder asked. Wang Hengji let out a long sigh. "I'll go." "Sect master, let me go instead," the second elder said. Going to borrow money meant lowering themselves and begging, becoming the junior in the relationship. And even then, there was no guarantee the Sage Heaven God Empire would lend anything. Their connection to true martial sect had long been broken. "I can't let our sect be destroyed," Wang Hengji said. "I'll give up dignity and even my life if I must." "But the Sage Heaven God Empire is far from here," another elder said. "The ancient Dragon God Empire only gave us 3 days. We don't even have enough time for a round trip." We still have the Thousand Thought Tome, Wang Hengji replied. It can perform spatial traversal using thought resonance. We can reach the Sage Heaven God Empire in less than an hour. The Thousand Thought Tome was one of the few precious artifacts left behind after the fall of the old True Martial Sacred Ground. Let's try contacting them with the tome first, the Great Elder suggested. See if they're even willing to acknowledge us. Everyone agreed. Because of the tension with the ancient Dragon God Empire, the entire sect was swallowed by unease. Xiaonan pushed Su Zimo's wheelchair back to her mountain residence. Much of True Martial Sect lay in ruins. There were few livable places left, so her peak housed many disciples. She and Deng Linyu were close friends, and the latter helped her push Su Zimo's chair up to a courtyard halfway up the mountain. "Anan, you're going to be dragged down by this cripple for your entire life," Deng Linyu said bitterly. "With your talent, you might become a grand emperor someday." Xiaonan simply smiled without arguing. "Sister Deng is much stronger than I am. I'm going to become a very powerful cultivator," Deng Linyu declared, clenching her fists. "I'll drive out every bad person who bullies us. I'm going back to train. I want to reach the Imperial Meridian Realm as soon as possible." She waved and hopped down the mountain. Xiaonan settled Su Zimo in place, making sure he still had a heartbeat before she relaxed. She wiped him down gently. He had not been bathed in so long that he already had a strange odor. By the time she finished caring for him, night had fallen. She sat cross-legged on the mountainside and began cultivating. As soon as she started, the world reacted. Endless sword intent burst from her body. She became like a heaven-piercing divine blade, sharp enough to cut down everything. Sword intent surged wildly. Stones rolled, trees snapped, and even the air cracked around her. She cultivated through the entire night. At dawn, when violet light rose in the east, she finally drew the sword intent back into her body. Instantly, she looked like a gentle, delicate girl again. Her personality stood in stark contrast to the terrifying power she practiced. Xiaonan glanced at Su Zimo in the wheelchair. "You must be hungry," she murmured. She ran down the mountain to prepare hot porridge, gently pried open Su Zimo's lips, and fed him spoon by spoon. Only after he finished did she make food for herself. Her life was simple. Other than caring for Su Zimo, she trained alone, or sometimes Deng Linyu came to visit. A few days passed. Wang Hengji and the elders wore dark expressions. They had used the Thousand Thought Tome to contact the Sage Heaven God Empire, but received no response. Now they stood at the sect gate as the dragon ship of the ancient Dragon God Empire descended once again. Thunder boomed, the heavens trembled, and draconic might flooded the area. Ocean Dragon Prince stood atop the ship in his dragon robe, full of aggression. "The 3-day limit is up. Have you gathered the protection fee? Ocean Dragon Prince, could you grant us a few more days?" Wang Hengji asked helplessly. "I'm not here to do charity," Ocean Dragon Prince said coldly. "If you don't have it, then get out." He waved his hand dismissively. Wang Hengji and the others turned pale. Unable to hold her anger, Deng Linyu snapped, "This is our True Martial Sacred Ground's ancestral land. Why should we leave?" "Why?" Ocean Dragon Prince sneered. "Because my fist is bigger. Got a problem with that?" He swung his arm. Countless dragon serpents erupted into the sky, filling the air as they encircled the entire True Martial Sect. There were at least 100 of them, dense enough to trigger anyone's phobia. "Damn it," Deng Linyu growled. "I'm not afraid of you. If it's a fight you want, I'll fight." "Kill them," Ocean Dragon Prince ordered, his eyes glowing red. "Today is the day True Martial Sect is wiped out. Let this be your lesson for offending me." The dragon serpents roared forward, shattering the void. "Quick! Activate the formation!" Wang Hengji shouted. True Martial Sect was too weak. The elders weren't afraid of the dragon serpents, but their few dozen young disciples couldn't possibly withstand them. Thunder cracked as the protective formation activated, blocking the dragon serpents outside. But no one felt relieved. The formation was weak, It could only hold for a short while. Once it broke, the slaughter would begin. "Sect Master, what do we do?" someone asked. "If we die today, I'll die first," Wang Hengji said, resolute and tragic. Everyone stared at the formation. After 10 minutes, cracks covered its surface. The dragon serpents grew even more violent, boiling with rage. With a sharp crack, one corner of the formation shattered. The serpents poured in like a raging flood. The entire sect tensed. At that moment, a thunderous blast exploded through the sky. A loud voice roared, "Who dares commit evil here?" The thunderous shout echoed across the sky like a bolt striking the heavens. The sound alone shook the void apart. Everyone instantly turned toward its source. From the eastern horizon, a figure stepped through the air toward them. His presence radiated overwhelming righteous energy. His aura distorted the very fabric of the void, covering heaven and earth and sending wave after wave of pressure outward. His speed was incredible. Within moments he had crossed half the sky. Crackling sounds sparked in the air as his force pressed down. When he strode closer, everyone finally saw him clearly. Thick brows, broad ears, and a face filled with unshakable integrity. He wore a plain gray robe made of coarse linen, yet the power rolling off him tore at the surroundings. He looked at the swarm of dragon serpents. Without hesitation, he drew the long sword at his waist. A brilliant sword light erupted, sweeping through the heavens and illuminating the entire realm. A thunderous boom split the air. With one strike, the sky itself seemed cleaved in two. The massive cluster of dragon serpents was annihilated under the force of his sword energy. "You, who are you?" Ocean Dragon Prince narrowed his eyes and asked coolly. "And who are you?" the young man asked coldly. "To commit violence here in broad daylight? This is an internal affair of the ancient dragon god empire. Stay out of it," Ocean Dragon Prince replied. "Then today I insist on interfering," the young man shot back. "Yen Pingfan, you're that Yen Pingfan whose name has been spreading lately?" Ocean Dragon Prince's expression changed. "The one who crushed the 3 thieves and killed the flower thief Wang Feng?" "That's right," Yen Pingfan said. "I loathe bullies more than anything. What happens to this sect today is my concern." "Then you'd better have the strength to match your words," Ocean Dragon Prince roared. Behind him, endless dragon serpents erupted once more, dense enough to blot out the entire sky as they charged forward with murderous fury. "Myriad heavenly swords," Yen Pingfan said calmly. He flicked his sword, drawing a flower of sword light through the air. He swung the blade again and again, each burst of sword force carrying world-shaking power. With every slash, many dragon serpents exploded into pieces. In the span of a few breaths, Ocean Dragon Prince's millions of serpent beasts were wiped out. Their corpses rained from the sky in a grim, drizzling downpour. Ocean Dragon Prince's expression twisted. He transformed into his half-dragon, half-python form, caught midway through metamorphosis. The massive creature roared, spraying foul wind and bloody mist. The air shattered around its enormous body as it lunged. Its gigantic tail swept out like a collapsing mountain. Yen Pingfan snorted, raised his sword, and met it head-on. Heaven-shocking sword, sky-severing cut. His figure blurred as his sword force engulfed the entire world. His blade, impossibly sharp, struck with overwhelming force and severed the giant tail cleanly. The dragon python howled in agony and rage. Yen Pingfan ignored both. He stepped high into the air, aura erupting, and landed directly on the monster's head. His sword spun once, then drove sharply downward into Ocean Dragon Prince's skull. Dragon Crying Tempest. Ocean Dragon Prince unleashed his final trump card. A violent burst of power erupted, flinging Yen Pingfan away. "Damn you! Just wait!" Ocean Dragon Prince shouted. With his tail severed and humiliation burning through him, he fled in a panic, racing into the distance. "I'll be back. When the armies of my ancient dragon god empire arrive, it will be your death day, Yen Pingfan, and the day the true martial sect is destroyed." The dragon ship tore through the sky and vanished. When everything finally calmed, Yen Pingfan descended into the true martial sect. "Thank you, benefactor, for saving us from annihilation," Wang Hengji said solemnly, nearly kneeling before him. Yen Pingfan quickly helped him back up. "Don't say things like that. As cultivators, it's our duty to stand against injustice and protect the weak. I only did what I should." "But what caused this?" he asked. "How did it escalate to the point of destroying your sect?" "It was the ancient dragon god empire stirring up trouble," Deng Linyu said, eyes sparkling with admiration as she looked at him. "They've pushed us too far. We had no choice." "I believe you," Yen Pingfan said. "The weak often have no room to choose." A nearby elder spoke anxiously. "Even if we drove the prince away, Ocean Dragon Prince isn't that strong. When the ancient dragon god empire brings its full army, what do we do?" Yen Pingfan fell silent for a moment, thinking, "Since I've stepped into this matter, I'll see it through." "This won't do," Wang Hengji said quickly. "True martial sect's problems shouldn't drag a young master like you down." "Don't worry," Yen Pingfan said, shaking his head with a smile. "I don't fear the ancient dragon god empire. I'll protect this sect no matter what." Then on behalf of the members of True Martial Sect, "I thank you," Wang Hengji said sincerely. He truly didn't want to burden Yen Pingfan, but with the sect's current situation, they had no better choice. Yen Pingfan's arrival breathed life back into True Martial Sect. Wang Hengji welcomed him with full respect, and the sect became lively again. But on Xiao Anin's mountain peak, everything remained quiet. Xiao Anin was cultivating, yet something felt wrong. Her sword intent dispersed after leaving her body and refused to gather. At first she thought her sword intent was too weak, so she trained harder over the years, growing stronger and stronger, yet the cohesion still never appeared. She finally realized the problem lay elsewhere. Frowning, deep in thought, she suddenly heard a voice. "The true martial sword physique cannot be cultivated this way." Who said that?" Xiao Anin jolted. Then a thought struck her. She turned toward the wheelchair. The young man sitting in it had opened his eyes. His gaze was deep and completely dark. You're awake," Xiao Anin said, unable to hide her excitement. "Just woke up," Su Zimo replied. In truth, he'd been conscious for some time but focused entirely on repairing his body, delaying his awakening. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Not bad. I still can't walk yet," Su Zimo said. "That's fine, I can push you," Xiao Anin said quickly. "Are you the imperial ancestor of our true martial sacred ground?" Su Zimo let out a soft laugh. "I'm somewhat connected to your ancestral founder. In essence, yes, I count as your ancestor. The true martial sacred ground of the primordial heartlands and the true martial sacred ground of the nine heavens were both created by Grand Emperor Jinwu. In essence, they were no different, one lineage, one origin. The sect on the primordial heartlands was even older. The emperor only ascended later and founded the nine heavens true martial sacred ground afterward. Strictly speaking, Su Zimo truly was their ancestor. "Ancestor, you just said I can't cultivate sword intent this way and that I'll never condense it. What does that mean?" Xiao Anin asked urgently. "Just call me young master. I am not that old," Su Zimo replied. "Well, fine. You've taken good care of me these days, so I'll show you the right path. You have the true martial sword physique, don't you?" "Yes." Xiao Anin nodded quickly. "Ancestor knows this physique?" "I've asked many people. They all said it's special, but they've never seen it before. It's extremely rare. You could say it's unique under heaven," Su Zimo said. The true martial sword physique had once been one of the 100 great physiques on the primordial heartlands, each one unique in the world. The true martial sword physique was later obtained by Grand Emperor Jinwu. Though it couldn't compare to the top-ranked physiques, it was still incredibly powerful. After the Grand Emperor achieved sainthood, he refined it again, elevating it far beyond its former ranking. It became an unparalleled sword physique, a priceless treasure for any cultivator. Su Zimo couldn't understand why Grand Emperor Jinwu had left such a physique behind or how it ended up in Xiaonin's possession. "How did you get this physique?" he asked. "How did I get it?" Xiaonin shook her head in confusion. "I was born with it." "Oh? Born with it?" Su Zimo smiled. "That's interesting. Young master, you still haven't answered my question. The reason you can't condense sword intent and why your sword force always disperses is simple," Su Zimo said. "Your physique is incomplete." Xiaonin froze. "You want to condense sword intent? Then you have to complete your physique first." "But how do I complete it?" she asked, bewildered. Su Zimo didn't answer immediately. He narrowed his eyes slightly, deep in thought. "Grand Emperor Jinwu, is this all coincidence? Or did you plan this long ago?" He slowly took out a token, the true martial token. Before Su Zimo left the primordial heartlands, the Skyshroud war god had entrusted the token to him, saying Grand Emperor Jinwu had left it behind. Anyone carrying it could freely enter the true martial sacred ground of the 9 heavens. At the time, Su Zimo thought it was just a symbolic token. But the moment he brought it out, "I knew it," Xiaonin said quickly. "I sensed a familiar aura from you before. It was this thing." She accepted the token, and her true martial sword physique trembled uncontrollably, as though recognizing its source. Sword force burst out of her body without warning, slicing a nearby cliff clean in half. This was sword force unleashed unintentionally, yet its power was enough to terrify anyone. "So, young master can complete my physique?" Xiaonin asked in shock. "Take it. It was meant for you," Su Zimo said. "Thank you, sir. Thank you." Xiaonin dropped to her knees in gratitude. Despite her shy nature, she was relentless when it came to cultivation. She had struggled with her physique since childhood. Everyone praised her talent, but no one could solve her problem. Her body trembled with emotion. "Go complete your physique," Su Zimo said gently. His own strength had nearly recovered. In a few days he would be fully healed. Before arriving at the true martial sect, he had prepared himself for anything, yet he hadn't expected the sect to have fallen this far. Sweeping the area with his spiritual sense, he found the strongest person barely clinging to life at the God Meridian realm. But then something caught his attention. "Still, I found something interesting," he murmured. Xiaonin could no longer wait. She held the token tightly as power surged through her. Thunder rumbled inside her body. Her sword force solidified into tangible force, trembling violently. And that was only the beginning. Grand Emperor Jinwu had hidden a portion of his cultivation within this sword physique. Completing the physique meant gaining access to that inheritance. Xiaonin's strength was about to transform entirely. Sword intent from the true martial token wrapped around her in an endless tide. After some time, she slowly opened her eyes and exhaled. Her breath shot forward like a sword, tearing open a section of the void. "So strong," she whispered, startled by her own power. "You couldn't condense sword intent since childhood, so your cultivation never stopped accumulating sword force. Now that the fusion is complete, it's stronger than anything ordinary," Su Zimo explained. He didn't mention Grand Emperor Jinwu. He had just arrived and didn't yet understand the current state of the sect. Xiaonin started to thank him again, but Su Zimo waved it away. "Enough. I have some questions." "Please ask, Ancestor," Xiaonin said respectfully. "Where is Grand Emperor Jinwu? I mean true martial saint sovereign." "I don't know," she replied. "The sect master said the founder was already gone when he joined the sect. As for us new disciples, none of us have ever seen him. If the founder were still here, our sect wouldn't have fallen so low." "What about Sandao, Shenxing, and Hongtian?" Su Zimo asked. "I've never heard those names. Are they also our ancestral founders?" The sect master might know more. It was clear Xiaonin knew very little. Su Zimo couldn't get any answers, so he nodded. "Take me around the sect." "Okay," she said obediently. She pushed Su Zimo's wheelchair down the mountain. As soon as they reached the foot of the peak, They ran into Deng Linyu, who was showing Yen Pingfan around the true martial sect. "Young Master Yen, this is one of the main peaks," Deng Linyu said. When the disciple shouted, Sect Master Wang Hengji frowned slightly. This was the ancestral tomb area. If a body appeared here, could it be an ancestor? Wang Hengji didn't dare be careless and immediately hurried forward. Beside one of the tombs lay a young man. Of course, no one would assume he was truly young. Many ancestors kept the appearance they had in their youth. "Check him. Is he still breathing?" someone asked. "I'll examine him myself," Wang Hengji said. He knelt down and felt for the youth's aura. Spirit energy shifted around him, a faint blue glow wrapping Su Zimo's entire body. "He's still breathing," Wang Hengji called out excitedly. He poured all his spirit energy into Su Zimo, trying to heal him. But compared to Su Zimo, his energy was nothing more than a drop in the ocean, completely swallowed without effect. Before long, Wang Hengji's face turned pale from exhaustion. When he stood up, he swayed and nearly collapsed. "Sect Master!" A disciple rushed forward to support him. "Is he one of our ancestors?" someone asked cautiously. "I don't know," Wang Hengji replied, shaking his head. "I can't even tell whether he's truly alive or dead." He frowned. "His life force is there, but he won't wake up. It's like he's trapped in a deep sleep." "What do we do?" an elder asked. "We don't know if he's friend or foe. If he's an evildoer and we save him, the true martial sect could be finished. That won't happen. He appeared in the ancestral tomb of the true martial sacred ground. I believe he's someone connected to us," Wang Hengji said. "Bring him back with us." He gestured toward a young woman in the distance. "Linyu, I'll leave this fellow Taoist in your care." He had wanted to call him an ancestor, but he didn't know his identity, so fellow Taoist was safer. The woman he addressed, Deng Linyu, was the sect's saintess. "Master, you want me to take care of him?" she said, startled. She eyed the unconscious Su Zimo, her expression full of reluctance. "But I need to cultivate. I don't have time to look after him." "That's an order," Wang Hengji said sharply. Deng Linyu pouted, eyes glossy with grievance. Wang Hengji rubbed his temples. He had spoiled this disciple far too much and now couldn't control her. "Niece Deng doesn't need to force herself," the Grand Elder said with a placating smile. "This man's identity is unknown. We don't even know if he belongs to our sect. Why not choose someone else?" "Master, I'll take care of him," a soft voice said. Everyone turned. It was Xiao Anin, the Grand Elder's personal disciple. The Grand Elder nearly coughed up blood. His own granddaughter had undercut him in an instant. "Sect Master, since Anin is willing, let her take the responsibility," Linyu said. "Sect Master, the girl is talking nonsense," the Grand Elder said with a stiff smile. "I'm not talking nonsense," Xiaonan said quietly, her eyes fixed on the unconscious youth. "I don't know why, but he feels familiar. Clothes even." The Grand Elder's expression crumpled into helplessness. She was not only his disciple but his granddaughter. He couldn't scold or punish her even if he wanted to. "I'm done with this," he muttered and left with a flick of his sleeve. Wang Hengji chuckled. He ordered a wheelchair to be built and had Su Zimo placed onto it. Xiaonan stayed at his side. "If you need anything, just ask. The sect will support you," Wang Hengji told her. Xiaonan nodded shyly. She was quiet, reserved, and clearly not talkative. "I don't need anything," she said softly. Wang Hengji left to oversee the ancestor worship ceremony. After he departed, Deng Linyu approached Xiao Anin. "Anin, are you stupid? We don't even know who he is. What if he stays paralyzed forever? Are you going to take care of him for life? Don't waste your future. I'll go talk to Master." "It's fine," Xiaonan said softly, shaking her head. "I don't know why, but he feels familiar. I'll take care of him for now. If he really stays like this forever, then I'll take care of him forever." "You silly girl. Don't regret it later," Deng Linyu sighed. Meanwhile, Wang Hengji had ordered the disciples to prepare the offerings before the thousands of ancestral graves. The true martial sect had completely declined. Only a few thousand disciples remained. But they were loyal and united, with little conflict among them. The atmosphere was warm despite the sect's fall. Wang Hengji walked to one particular grave, a small, inconspicuous one among many. It belonged to Wang Qianhe, Elder Qianhe. His strength and seniority were not impressive compared to the other ancestors, but he was the one Wang Hengji respected most, because he was the only master he had personally known. He placed the offerings, lit incense, and knelt. "Master, you always sighed back then, telling me how glorious the true martial sacred ground once was. I've struggled so hard to rebuild the true martial sect. But everything is difficult. Forget restoring our glory, I don't even know how long we can survive. If you can hear me in the afterlife, please watch over the sect." He rose to leave. Then the sound of drums echoed from the direction of the sect. Wang Hengji's expression changed instantly. That drum was only struck when the sect was facing an enemy. "What happened?" an elder said, frowning. "Quick! Go check if we're under attack," the disciples whispered anxiously. Wang Hengji took the lead and hurried toward the sect entrance. Behind him, Xiaoanan pushed the wheelchair carrying Su Zimo. Su Zimo smiled. Looking at Wang Hengji, he said, "Some matters are beyond your reach at your current level. Ancestor, your teaching is right," Wang Hengji said quickly, bowing his head. "With Imperial Ancestor's return, my heart is finally at ease. At least the true martial sacred ground won't be easily destroyed anymore." The Imperial Ancestor of the true martial sacred ground never left, Su Zimo said, giving Grandpa Dao a vague look. "As for so-called destruction, in this world, prosperity leads to decline. Without destruction, how could something stronger be reborn? Then are the other ancestors of the true martial sacred ground still around?" Wang Hengji asked. "There are rumors I've heard, that all the ancestors died in that great war." "I'm tired," Su Zimo said with a wave of his hand. Wang Hengji instantly understood. He had been too excited upon meeting the ancestor, asking too many questions, and had made Su Zimo unwilling to speak further. Wang Hengji felt wronged. Before the ancestor appeared, he had been struggling alone to support the sect, living every day in fear. "I'll arrange a place for ancestor to rest," Wang Hengji said. "No need," Su Zimo replied with a wave. He pointed at Xiaoanan. "Let this girl stay with me. I'll just live on her peak." Since Su Zimo said so, Wang Hengji didn't dare object. It was a pity, though. When they first discovered Su Zimo, he had already suspected something and arranged for Deng Linyu to look after him. There had been private intentions mixed in too. But Deng Linyu refused and missed her chance. Now there was nothing he could do. Since Su Zimo was confirmed as the ancestor, personally affirmed by Grandpa Dao, it couldn't be wrong. In that case, Deng Linyu simply didn't have the fortune for it. The grand elder beside them was grinning like a fool. "I said so, good deeds bring good rewards. When Nen insisted on taking care of the ancestor back then, I didn't stop her." "You call that not stopping her? Who was it that got so angry he stormed off?" Wang Hengji said, irritated by the grand elder's smug face. "Enough. You all talk among yourselves. I'm going to be alone." "Sect master, who is alone?" an elder teased. Watching Wang Hengji's retreating back, Deng Linyu still felt unwilling. Supporting the severely injured Yan Pingfan, she muttered, "Clearly, young Master Yan was the one who saved our true martial sacred ground. And that guy, even if he really is an ancestor, did nothing at all." She looked at Yan Pingfan and whispered, "Young Master Yan, next time they need your help, the ancient dragon god empire won't give up. When that time comes, reveal that guy's true face." Hearing this, Yan Pingfan forced a faint smile. He didn't explain anything to her. Deng Linyu supported him as they left, leaving only Su Zimo, Xiaoanan, and Grandpa Dao remaining. Xiaoanan was preparing to leave as well. "Grandpa Dao will be going now," she said. "Go, go!" The old man waved, smiling. Don't forget the true martial tribulation tower. Master, did you really gain control of the true martial tribulation tower? Xiaonan asked, curious. Rather than say I control the tower, it's more accurate to say the tower was waiting for me all along, Su Zimo replied. Xiaonan didn't fully understand, but she still brought Su Zimo back to her mountain peak. After the Ocean Dragon Prince was driven away, life at the true martial sacred ground gradually returned to peace. During this period, Su Zimo began cultivating again. Of the inheritances he had gathered so far, he possessed the ancient god inheritances of fire, wood, wind, water, and metal. These inheritances had originally been acquired separately, so he hadn't thought much of them. But as he gained more, Su Zimo began to notice something. These inheritances could be merged. Or rather, the ancient gods had once cultivated the same Tao, only the paths they eventually took differed. 1,000 paths returned to the same origin. During his rest, Su Zimo repeatedly studied these inheritances, merging them one by one, then splitting them again. He found the process intriguing. This fusion and separation was like the Tao itself, could contain all things and all things could separate at any moment. That night, Xiaonan sat cross-legged on a cliff, cultivating her true martial sword physique. Ever since Su Zimo helped her complete it, her speed had soared. She had already reached the Empyrean Meridian realm and was pushing toward the God Meridian realm. Su Zimo knew this was the power of the true martial sword physique. It was far more than a simple sword physique. Within it were countless methods left behind by the true martial saint sovereigns, enough to support her cultivation all the way to the peak of the Grand Emperor realm. Whether she could step into sainthood would depend on her own ability. Come out. You've been hiding there for quite a while, Su Zimo said suddenly, looking up at the sky. Silence surrounded him, except for the chirping of insects hiding in the dark. Then a soft laugh sounded. A figure in a wide black robe stepped out slowly from the shadows. So you're actually the imperial ancestor of the true martial sacred ground? The person who appeared was Yan Pingfan. But the Yan Pingfan before him now was completely different, not in appearance but in temperament. Previously, Yan Pingfan behaved like a gentle and polite gentleman, like a chivalrous hero who defended justice. But now, though he looked the same, the aura around him was overwhelming, arrogant, and domineering. Power cracked through the air with explosive force. He stood proud and overbearing, a mocking smile on his face. The force surrounding him was nearly storm-like. Most importantly, this Yan Pingfan's strength. Su Zimo chuckled. A saint sovereign coming to the true martial sacred ground, pretending to be a heroic wanderer? That's quite amusing. And what about you? Aren't you pretending as well? Yan Pingfan replied. We've investigated. In the history of the true martial sacred ground, there has never been an ancestor like you. Oh? So you've been investigating me these past few days? Su Zimo said with a small smile. Well, what did you find? At those words, Yan Pingfan frowned slightly. He had indeed investigated Su Zimo, but the result was nothing, not a single trace, as if this man had simply appeared out of thin air. There's only one other possibility. Su Zimo isn't from this world, the absolute God heaven, at all. He must have come from another of the 9 heavens. As for Yan Pingfan himself, he firmly believed this. Or rather, he leaned heavily toward the idea that Su Zimo came from elsewhere. Because anyone who had lived in the absolute God heaven would have left traces. No one could be completely invisible. He had even looked into every ancestor of the true martial sacred ground across its history, checking one by one. Not a single one matched Su Zimo. So Yan Pingfan assumed Su Zimo's purpose was the same as his own. In the night sky, the two faced each other from afar. A cold breeze swept by, blowing their hair in the wind. Su Zimo asked, So who sent you? You don't need to know my identity, Yan Pingfan snorted. I'm only here to warn you, no matter who you are. This muddy water isn't something you should dip your hands into. Be careful you don't attract the killing blades. Well, that's funny, Su Zimo replied. Because I enjoy licking blood off the edge of the knife and walking the tightrope over fire. So you're really seeking death, Yan Pingfan said. Do you actually think you're my match? Su Zimo's eyes narrowed. A powerful force churned around his body. With a sweep of his hand, he reached directly toward Yan Pingfan. Yan Pingfan's expression shifted. The moment the attack came, he immediately sensed that Su Zimo's strength was at least equal to his own, if not greater. When did the true martial sacred ground gain someone like this? Yan Pingfan thought in shock. He struck out with a palm of his own. Their palms collided in midair and exploded. A booming blast shook the night. Space twisted. Chaotic spatial currents erupted everywhere. And the shockwave jolted the entire true martial sacred ground awake. Yan Pingfan's palm force shattered instantly. Su Zimo's palm didn't slow at all. The pressure grew stronger and stronger, gathering spirit energy without stopping. Within 1,000,000 miles, every trace of spirit energy was devoured as if swallowed by a giant whale. Yan Pingfan's expression completely changed. He knew Su Zimo was strong, but he hadn't expected this. One exchange was enough to push him beyond what he could handle. Damn it, he growled. Sword light flashed before him. Endless sword intent burst in the air, powerful enough to annihilate everything in its path. It managed to shatter Su Zimo's giant palm. We're comparing weapons now? Su Zimo snorted. Shadow Tyrant shot out of its sheath. The blade was like crackling thunder, carrying the unbreakable ancient metal god Dao. It turned into a golden bolt of lightning, slicing through 10,000 sword lights and slashing straight toward Yan Pingfan. Yan Pingfan hurriedly raised his sword to block. Another explosion thundered across the sky. His body was blown away like a rag doll. When Yan Pingfan finally hit the ground, he was covered in countless wounds. Flesh was torn open everywhere, and nearly half his body had been blasted away. He roared with fury. Today's pain, you'll repay it 1,000-fold in the future. After shouting this, he didn't dare continue fighting. He immediately fled into the distance. He knew he wasn't Su Zimo's opponent. Continuing the fight would only place him in grave danger, and he might even die here. Su Zimo didn't chase him. Instead, he looked toward the true martial tribulation tower. Softly, he said, Sandao back then, I also called you Ancestor. I wonder if the blade in your hand is still sharp. The moment his voice fell, a blade light tore through the night sky, splitting the heavens. Live beneath the blade, die beneath the blade. Slay gods, slay immortals, slay demons, slay Buddhas. A deep, steady voice followed the knife light. That flash was only a moment long, brief yet bright enough to illuminate the entire sky. Then Yan Pingfan's head fell from his shoulders. An old man's silhouette stepped through the air from the distance. His figure was hidden in the void, hazy and indistinct. A moment earlier, he seemed hundreds of meters away. The next instant, with a single step, he was already above the clouds. The old man sheathed his blade and picked up Yan Pingfan's corpse, one hand gripping the mangled body, the other holding the severed head. Then he disappeared into the darkness. All of this seemed slow, but in reality it happened in an instant, just like the blade light, here one moment, gone the next. Because of the explosion earlier, Wang Hengji and the elders were naturally startled awake. They all rushed through the air toward Su Zimo's mountain to see what happened. Ancestor, what happened? Wang Hengji hurriedly asked. Nothing. Don't panic over every little thing. I was just cultivating, Su Zimo said. Wang Hengji let out a breath of relief. He had worried a powerful enemy had arrived. If you need anything, Ancestor, just say the word. Go on, all of you, Su Zimo said with a wave of his hand. Wang Hengji took the elders and left. Su Zimo looked again toward the true martial tribulation tower and smiled. That blade is still sharp. The old man may be aged, but his knife is even sharper. Ancestor, that young Master Yan was a bad person, right? A small voice asked behind him. It was Xiaoanan. She had been cultivating on the mountaintop and had witnessed the battle as soon as it began. From every angle, her allegiance lay with Su Zimo, so she couldn't help asking. And that figure in the sky just now, he looked a lot like Grandpa Dao. Girl, I know you're sharp and quick to understand, Su Zimo said. But some things shouldn't be touched. Just like I told your sect master today, if your strength isn't enough, then don't ask. When your level is high enough, you'll naturally understand. For now, all you need to do is cultivate well. I'll listen to you, Shaowen nodded. The explosion that night was covered up by Su Zimo, who claimed it was caused by cultivation. It wasn't the powerful enemies Wang Hengji feared, but the enemy Wang Hengji feared did arrive before dawn. A colossal dragon ship of the ancient dragon god empire tore through the void. This time, the dragon ship came with immense force. One could say without exaggeration that even before the ship appeared, the pressure it emitted was already shattering the sky. Su Zimo glanced up once, then ignored it and continued cultivating. As for Sandao sitting before the true martial tribulation tower, his long sleeping eyes opened just a sliver, knife light flickered within them. But almost immediately, he closed them again and adjusted into a new sleeping position. Getting old, really getting old. Even a tiny commotion wakes me up now. Old, so damn old. Su Zimo and Sandao didn't care. But the rest of the true martial sacred ground, they looked at the dragon ship and the shattered sky as if the apocalypse had arrived. TL note: Grand Emperor Sandao's backstory and rise to Grand Emperor was provided in detail in Chapter 171. Before the dragon ships even arrived, the roar of dragons was already echoing across the land. Just the sheer force and pressure of their presence alone made it clear that before a single blow was exchanged, the ancient dragon god empire held the advantage. As countless dragon ships emerged from the void, a booming blast followed. The sky shattered completely, and the massive fleet burst through the torn space. The oppressive might pressing down on the true martial sacred ground left everyone trembling like cicadas in winter. Wang Hengji and the elders looked up at the sky. One by one, they fell silent. The 33 million dragon ships of the ancient dragon god empire, the entire Red Dragon army is here. This ocean dragon prince really thinks highly of us. He actually brought all of that. He truly intends to leave the true martial sacred ground with no path to survival. Sect Master, what do we do? Someone asked, panic showing on their face. The Red Dragon army was the strongest military force of the ancient dragon god empire. Rumor had it that wherever they marched, lands fell and no enemy could stand in their way. Their reputation spread fear across the entire empire. And that wasn't all. Every soldier of the Red Dragon army cultivated a combined battle technique. Each soldier could transform into a single dragon scale, and together they could merge, becoming a living, breathing true dragon, capable of sweeping across armies. On the foremost of the 33 dragon ships stood Ocean Dragon Prince, wearing a robe of imperial python gold. His eyes were sharp and fierce. Beside him were two elders, one dressed in black, one in white. These were the Black-White Twin Fiends, two famed God Meridian cultivators of the ancient dragon god empire. The true martial sacred ground's strongest remaining ancestor was merely a withered god Meridian cultivator nearing the end of his life. How could he possibly fight the Twin Fiends, whose blood and vitality were still at their peak? With the Red Dragon army descending, they truly left no path of survival. Ocean Dragon Prince stepped into the air, hovering above the true martial sacred ground. He looked down on them with arrogance and pride. People of the true martial sacred ground, have that Yen Pingfan come out to see me. Hearing his words, Wang Hengji finally reacted. Right, where is young Master Yen? He asked quickly. Father, you only remember him now? Deng Linyu stood beside him. Her eyes were red, as if she had cried. When I woke up this morning, he was already gone. We must have disappointed him. He must have left. He left? Wang Hengji murmured, stunned. You always sided with the ancestor. But now that the army is at our gates, where's your ancestor? Deng Linyu asked resentfully. Mind your manners, Wang Hengji snapped. He turned to the Grand Elder. Go bring Willow Ancestor out of seclusion. The old ancestor has been sealed in slumber. I don't know how long he can still endure, the Grand Elder sighed. He glanced up at the black-white twin fiends. In his heart, he knew, even if Willow Ancestor emerged, he would be giving up the last of his life for nothing. It would not solve their crisis. Wang Hengji sighed heavily. I'll go find the ancestor, he said. He wasn't referring to Willow Ancestor. He meant Su Zimo. There was no other choice now. In a moment like this, strength was strength. If you had it, you had it. If you didn't, no trick could replace it. On the mountainside where Xiaonan lived, she slowly opened her eyes. She had just broken through to the God Meridian realm. Her entire body radiated like a sword aimed at the heavens, sharp and unstoppable. In the distance, a mountain peak 100 meters away was sliced clean in half by her sword intent and collapsed. Xiaonan was overjoyed. She hadn't expected her restored true martial sword physique to allow her to advance at such incredible speed. In only a few days, she had reached the God Meridian realm. But she also felt that the higher she climbed, the more resistance she encountered. Progress was no longer smooth. It grew harder and required more time. She understood she had been pushing too fast. She would need to stabilize her God Meridian before she attempted to charge toward the Grand Emperor realm. A realm that even in the ancient Dragon God Empire was reserved for elites. She flew down toward the lower mountainside, eager to share the good news with Su Zimo. But at that moment, Su Zimo was sitting in his wheelchair, eyes closed. His breath fluctuated, sometimes strong, sometimes faint, and a soft glow pulsed around him, brightening and dimming like a heartbeat. It was a strange, unfathomable state. Xiaonan stayed quietly beside him, not daring to disturb him. She simply watched. Ancestor looks so young, she smiled. People say those who look young are actually ancient monsters who've lived millions of years. I wonder if that's true. HM? What are you mumbling about? Su Zimo's voice suddenly sounded. Xiaonan nearly jumped out of her skin. She quickly stepped back and then forced a smile. And nothing. Imperial Ancestor, I broke through to the God Meridian realm. That's normal, Su Zimo said. Breaking into the God Meridian wasn't your own merit. It's the power of the sword physique. If you can break into the Saint Sovereign realm, then you'll be proving yourself. I understand. I'll work hard, Xiaonan said immediately. Su Zimo nodded slightly, eyes lifting toward the sky. What are you looking at, young master? She asked. Your sect master. He should be arriving soon, Su Zimo said. Come. Push me to the sect gates. Xiaonan nodded. As a God Meridian cultivator now, she could clearly sense the powerful aura gathering at the entrance of the sect. Wang Hengji's figure was rapidly approaching through the air. She pushed Su Zimo down the mountain. As they reached the foot, Wang Hengji rushed over. Ancestor, where are you going? He asked. What do you think? Su Zimo replied. Wang Hengji immediately understood. He dropped to his knees. Imperial Ancestor, please save the true martial sacred ground. We descendants are incompetent. Our strength is insufficient, and our failures have brought disaster upon the sect. This disaster isn't your fault, Su Zimo said. The true martial sacred ground was destined to be destroyed. In contrast, you and your master rebuilt the sect in its darkest hour. That shows your sincerity. Ancestor sees clearly, Wang Hengji said. Come. Let's go wipe out this ancient dragon god empire. Su Zimo smiled. They walked forward. Su Zimo's pace was unhurried. Though Wang Hengji was almost frantic, terrified the sect wouldn't hold out. Su Zimo waved a hand and smiled. Sect Master Wang, don't rush. The sky won't fall. Yes, but I can't help worrying. It's in my nature, Wang Hengji said bitterly. At last, the group arrived slowly at the sect gates. When the group reached the sect's entrance, the Willow Ancestor was already locked in combat with the black-white twin fiends. Several million Red Dragon army soldiers surrounded the area, their presence overwhelming as the war drums pounded non-stop. High in the sky, they watched the fight from above. Compared to the forces of the ancient Dragon God Empire, the disciples of the true martial sacred ground looked pathetically weak. One by one, they stared anxiously at the battle above, not daring to relax for even a second. If they lost, it meant slaughter. None of them would survive. Willow Ancestor, dressed in a loose green robe, appeared elderly and frail. The oversized robe snapped loudly in the fierce wind. His aura, however, remained formidable. God Meridian power surged around him in waves. His true life form was a willow branch, his very essence tied to wood. He wasn't human to begin with, but the twin fiends were no humans either. One was a black tiger, the other a white tiger. It was said that Willow Ancestor's origin dated back to when Saint Sovereign Sandao battled a powerful foe. The saint's saber intent had torn the heavens apart and annihilated an entire region. Only a single willow twig survived the destruction. The Saint Sovereign picked up that twig and brought it back to the true martial sacred ground, nurturing it until it gained sentience and took human form. That willow branch eventually became Willow Ancestor. Though Saint Sovereign Sandao never officially accepted disciples, Willow, who had been brought back by him, had always treated the saint as his benefactor and teacher. His loyalty to the true martial sacred ground sprang from that bond. He took Wang Hengji as a disciple, hoping the boy would fulfill the wish he himself could not, to restore the sect's glory. Now Willow Ancestor transformed into a towering celestial willow, his power surging fiercely. Even with both twin fiends attacking together, he was not easily overwhelmed. In fact, the black and white fiends suffered several lashes from the willow branches, each strike making them yowl in pain. "Good hit!" The disciples of the true martial sacred ground shouted excitedly. But unlike the disciples, the elders' expressions were troubled. They could tell Willow Ancestor was burning the last of his life force, a final flare of brilliance before the end. He looked strong now, but his strength would only diminish. Eventually, the twin fiends would break him. Willow Ancestor was simply too old. His life had nearly run its course. Had his true form been anything other than willow wood, he would have died long ago. He did not fear death, but he longed to see the true martial sacred ground shine once more before he passed. Finally, after a prolonged clash, his power began to wane. The black tiger seized the moment, pouncing onto the willow trunk and biting down savagely, as if intent on snapping it in half. Willow's agonized roar echoed across the battlefield. One could feel his pain just from the sound. "Damn it! I want to help Ancestor so badly, but we're too weak," a disciple muttered helplessly. Someone of their level could only rush in to die. They were powerless. "Don't you dare harm Ancestor!" A shout rang out. Xiaonan, pushing Su Zimo's wheelchair, saw the scene and instantly erupted with sword force. She shot into the sky toward the twin fiends. Wang Hengji, following behind them, was completely stunned. "God Meridian!" She reached God Meridian? He stared at Xiaonan's ascending figure in disbelief. "Ancestor, did you do this?" "It wasn't me," Su Zimo said casually. "Though someone did help. Don't make such a fuss. It's only God Meridian, ants. Nothing special." Standing beside him, Wang Hengji lowered his head, not daring to respond. Ancestor was terrifying as always. If God Meridian were insects, then what counted as true strength? As a mere Empyrean Meridian cultivator, he didn't dare to ask. Xiaonan soared upward. Her sudden strike caught the black tiger completely off guard. Her sword pierced straight through its abdomen. Howling in pain, the black tiger abandoned Willow and lunged toward her. Willow tried to help, but the white tiger cut him off. "Hurry up and kill the brat first, then deal with the old thing," the white tiger growled. Even weakened, Willow wasn't someone he could defeat alone. Initially, Ocean Dragon Prince had planned for the National Preceptor Situ to join him, but something happened midway, so the black and white twin fiends were sent instead, 2 of them together, out of fear that one alone wasn't enough. They had managed to overpower Willow, but now a girl had suddenly appeared and injured the black tiger. The black fiend growled, dark energy billowing around him as he tried to crush Xiaonan instantly. But Xiaonan's sword force was terrifyingly sharp, truly unstoppable. Against that sword force, the Black Fiend's defenses were like flimsy paper. Still, after a few exchanges, he realized something important. Xiao Anin's power was immense, but her combat experience was abysmal. Shockingly so, as if she hadn't climbed her way up step by step but had shot straight to this level overnight. With that weakness identified, the Black Fiend launched even fiercer attacks, every move aimed to kill. Seeing this, Wang Hengji grew anxious. Ancestor, Anin's experience is too shallow. She might not be able to keep up. Keep watching, Su Zimo said with a small smile. She may or may not lose. Don't jump to conclusions. Isn't that Black Fiend a perfect sparring partner? You're using him to temper Anin? Wang Hengji asked, finally understanding. Exactly. A fine whetstone. Su Zimo nodded. If you don't understand, then don't meddle. Just watch. You're the sect master. Look at yourself, panicking like a frightened bird. It's embarrassing. Yes, ancestor. Wang Hengji lowered his head again. And your strength is too weak, Su Zimo added. I'll find a chance to push you into the Grand Emperor realm. Break through to Grand Emperor? Wang Hengji stammered. With his talent and the sect's scarce resources, his master had always said becoming a Grand Emperor was impossible for him in this lifetime. He himself had long given up the idea. But Su Zimo's casual remark sparked something inside him, something he had never dared to hope for. Although Wang Hengji knew such a thing was basically impossible, after all, the Grand Emperor realm was not some casual stage anyone could just break into. He still couldn't help thinking of Xiao Anin. Her cultivation used to be below his, yet now she had already reached God Meridian. At this rate, becoming a Grand Emperor might not be far off for her. As for him, already at Empyrean Meridian, he only needed to cross the God Meridian threshold to enter the Grand Emperor realm. With those thoughts swirling in his mind, Wang Hengji immediately said, I beg Ancestor to grant me this opportunity. Stand up, Su Zimo said. Even if I don't help you, someone will. You rebuilt the true martial sacred ground. This is the reward you deserve. We'll talk after this battle ends. Yes, Wang Hengji said solemnly. Su Zimo looked back toward the ongoing fight. The black and white twin fiends were gradually losing ground. White Fiend was fighting Willow Ancestor, and alone he simply wasn't a match. Though Willow's strength wasn't impressive in his prime, age had turned him into a refined monster. His power was still formidable. The Willow path itself was tied to longevity. As for Black Fiend, he had initially suppressed Xiao Anin, but over time she gained more and more combat experience. More importantly, she had begun adapting to the intensity of his attacks. Her defense steadily grew stronger, and eventually she began counterattacking. The twin fiends grew increasingly anxious. Black Fiend glanced toward Ocean Dragon Prince in the sky and shouted, Ocean Dragon Prince, are you still just watching? Why haven't you ordered the Red Dragon army to attack? If I'd known you two were this useless, I would have brought the National Preceptor instead. Ocean Dragon Prince snapped coldly. Then he declared, No matter what, I will destroy the true martial sacred ground today. He raised his hand. Red Dragon Army, attack. Show your might and flatten this sect. The Red Army soldiers roared in response. Booming thunder-like tremors echoed as they charged downward like a flood. Many disciples of the true martial sacred ground trembled. Some couldn't even hold their weapons steady. With the sect in decline, the disciples they managed to recruit were not exactly the strongest talents. In the sky, millions of dragon might soldiers descended. The true martial sacred ground, in contrast, had only 56,000 disciples. The sheer disparity crushed any spark of fighting spirit they had left. Ancestor, please do something, Wang Hengji begged. These disciples aren't fit for heavy combat. Took us forever just to gather them. We can't let them all die. What are you panicking for? Su Zimo tilted his head slightly and snapped his fingers. A deafening boom followed. A bolt of lightning tore down from the heavens, splitting the sky in two. The Red Dragon army was instantly engulfed. Countless soldiers exploded on the spot, screams mixing with the stench of blood as bodies rained from above. The The once fearsome Red Dragon army fell into chaos. They had no chance to resist. Sky turned into a storm of corpses and blood. The true martial disciples, who moments before had been trembling, now stood frozen in shock. Even Deng Linyu, who came expecting to be entertained by the chaos, could no longer smile. She rubbed her eyes continuously. This isn't real. It can't be real. In the sky, Ocean Dragon Prince's face twisted in horror. He shouted hysterically, "Don't panic! Form the dragon formation. Condense the dragon soul. Don't forget, you are the invincible Red Dragon Army." His voice helped the surviving soldiers regain some spirit. They gathered together, dragon aura rising wildly. Their bodies transformed into pieces of white dragon scales, merging into a 100-meter-long white dragon that roared furiously at Su Zimo. "Noisy," Su Zimo said lightly. Another boom cracked the heavens. A massive stream of violet lightning crashed down, blasting the white dragon out of the sky. The dragon had no chance to resist. When the white dragon hit the ground, countless soldiers lay groaning in agony. Ocean Dragon Prince and the Twin Fiends, seeing this, immediately turned to flee. But escape was impossible. Su Zimo merely lifted his gaze. The space around them twisted. Time and space froze. The three of them were locked in midair like insects in amber. The crowd below stared blankly, unable to believe what they were seeing. Was the ancestor really this powerful? Su Zimo waved his hand, and the bodies of the Twin Fiends and Ocean Dragon Prince were thrown to the ground like puppets. "Sect Master Wang, it's your turn now," Su Zimo said. Wang Hengji swallowed hard, still recovering from shock. I understand." He walked slowly to Ocean Dragon Prince. The prince continued shouting, "Wang Hengji, you're finished. Truly finished. I won't spare any of you. Ocean Dragon Prince, even now? You're a prisoner and still dare threaten me." Wang Hengji snorted. As sect master, he could not afford to appear weak at this moment. "So what if I threaten you?" Long Hai hissed. "You think having a single strong cultivator makes you special? The ancient Dragon God Empire has countless cultivators, Grand Emperors included. If you release me now and apologize, there may still be room to negotiate. If you refuse to spare the true martial sacred ground, then taking you down with us before we die is good enough," Wang Hengji said coldly. Ocean Dragon Prince's expression faltered. He finally realized he had pushed too hard. "We can discuss this. Then answer me," Wang Hengji demanded. "Why have you targeted the true martial sacred ground again and again? We've already paid the protection fee. Why keep forcing us?" Ocean Dragon Prince remained silent. "Let me handle this," Su Zimo said, shaking his head with a faint smile. "You're still too soft. Without ruthlessness, you won't survive." Xiaonan pushed the wheelchair forward. Without another word, Su Zimo swung his blade and decapitated Black Fiend instantly. Everyone jumped in shock. "Still don't want to talk?" Su Zimo asked. Ocean Dragon Prince trembled violently, but kept his mouth shut. Su Zimo raised his blade again. Black Fiend's head was severed on the spot. It burst open like a watermelon, brain matter spraying and blood gushing everywhere. Someone like Su Zimo, he was a true butcher of thousands. Killing no longer stirred any feeling in him. That was why he could stay completely unfazed. "Next is your head," Su Zimo said. The Ocean Dragon Prince was scared out of his mind. He dropped to his knees, snot and tears flowing freely. "Just kill me. I really don't dare say it. That man is too terrifying. He'll wipe out our entire ancient Dragon God Empire." Hearing this, Wang Hengji frowned. It seemed the real mastermind behind targeting the true martial sacred ground was someone else. Ocean Dragon was just a messenger at best, a hired thug, ultimately insignificant. "You're afraid he'll destroy your ancient Dragon God Empire, but you're not afraid that I'll do it?" Su Zimo said. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Zimo reached into the void and pulled out a corpse, tossing it in front of the Crown Prince. "Take a good look." Before the Crown Prince could respond, Deng Linyu already gasped. "Young Master Yen." Everyone looked over. The corpse Su Zimo had produced was Yen Pingfan's. I knew it. I knew young Master Yen wouldn't just disappear without a word. So you killed him? Deng Linyu yelled, grief-stricken. Seeing her fall apart emotionally, Su Zimo frowned and glanced at Wang Hengji. You've taught your daughter well. He snorted. Stupid girl. Look carefully. He turned back to the crown prince. Now you can start talking. You killed him? The crown prince stammered, stunned. Killing him was no harder than butchering a dog, Su Zimo said with a shrug. Nothing worth fussing about. All right, I'll tell you. The crown prince seemed to have made up his mind. The one who ordered me was from one of the 10 god clans, the Gongshu god clan. The Gongshu god clan? Wang Hengji froze. When did our true martial sacred ground ever offend the Gongshu god clan? Look at this person. Do you recognize him? Su Zimo asked. The one who contacted me was a man in a black robe. He hid himself very well, but once, I managed to catch a glimpse of his true face. The crown prince pointed at Yen Pingfan's corpse. It was him. He's from the Gongshu god clan. You're saying young Master Yen is a member of the Gongshu god clan? Stop framing him. Deng Linyu snapped. Frame him? I'm basically a dead man. What the hell do I gain from lying? The crown prince sneered. He used the alias Yen Pingfan. He told me to attack the true martial sacred ground so he could perform a heroic rescue, earn your trust, and smoothly infiltrate your sect. You lie. Why would he infiltrate us? What could he possibly want? Deng Linyu demanded. Idiot, you really know nothing. Your true martial sacred ground was once glorious beyond belief. Even if you've declined now, sudden decline always has a reason. The crown prince smirked. I'm guessing your sect must possess something the 10 god clans desire. Hearing this, Deng Linyu seemed to lose all strength. She slumped to the ground, her eyes hollow. Wang Hengji couldn't bear to watch. He signaled 2 disciples. Take her to her room. The disciples supported the shaken Deng Linyu and left. She had believed she'd found her fated hero, strong, composed, exceptional in every way. She never imagined she had been nothing but a pawn in someone else's scheme. Fortunately, she hadn't fallen too deeply yet. She simply couldn't accept it for the moment. Su Zimo looked back at the crown prince. Have you ever been to the Gongshu god clan? No. Our ancient dragon god empire is decent, but we don't have the qualifications to meet the 10 god clans. The crown prince gave a bitter laugh. If not for this true martial sacred ground matter, I probably would have never seen anyone from them in my lifetime. At that point, he tried to bargain for his life. Can you spare me? I swear I'll never trouble the true martial sacred ground again. Su Zimo chuckled. He patted Wang Hengji on the shoulder. He's yours. Wang Hengji hesitated for a moment, then slowly drew his sword. Ocean Dragon Prince, I actually want to spare you too, but I know an old saying. Eliminate the root or suffer future trouble. He sighed. I should be decisive. His sword fell. Meanwhile, Shaoanen pushed Su Zimo's wheelchair back to the true martial tribulation tower. Grandpa Dao slowly opened his eyes. So, you've come to say goodbye? I really do have the life of a workhorse, Su Zimo said with a laugh. All of this was prepared for you, Grandpa Dao chuckled. From the moment you picked up the true martial token, the plan was set. Well then, since it all started because of me, I should be the one to settle it, Su Zimo said. And along the way, I'll cut a few people down. Consider it buying the true martial sacred ground a few more peaceful centuries. Grandpa Dao nodded with a smile. Take the disciples and temper them. We'll meet very soon. Su Zimo looked at Shaoanen. Go tell the sect master to gather all disciples. We're leaving the sect for a while. Leaving the sect? Where are we going? Shaoanen asked, startled. East, Su Zimo said as he looked toward the horizon. We'll exterminate the ancient dragon god empire and then march on the 10 god clans. What? Shaoanen was so shocked she couldn't speak. Marching on the 10 god clans. Saying something like that out loud, people would think they'd all gone mad. Even at its peak, The true martial sacred ground had only stood alongside the 10 god clans. Now, what did they have that could fight them? Just tell Wang Hengji what I said. Any disciple who refuses to go will be expelled from the sect, Su Zimo added. Before, you didn't have the means, so your decline was understandable. But now that everyone has a chance to grow stronger, if they still refuse, they're just dead weight. The true martial sacred ground isn't a retirement home for trash. Nothing in Su Zimo's tone suggested he was joking. Xiaonan quickly nodded and hurried off. As she left, Grandpa Dao remarked, "That girl's pretty good." "Didn't notice," Su Zimo said. "I meant her talent." "Oh, I was talking about her intelligence." Su Zimo chuckled. "You've worked hard too, all these years." "Hard? This is nothing," Grandpa Dao said quietly. "Beyond the stars, on the far side, there are people working far harder than we are." After hearing Grandpa Dao's words, Su Zimo fell silent for a long time. Then he asked, "Was it Hong Tian?" "No, it was Xin Xing," Grandpa Dao said with a smile. "Only he can reach the far side of the starry sky, and only he would choose to go. He once vowed to walk every mountain and river of the primordial heartlands. Now he has made a new vow, to set foot on every inch of land within the 9 heavens." Su Zimo smiled faintly. He had almost forgotten about Grand Emperor Xin Xing. In the history of the true martial sacred ground, Grand Emperor Zhenwu as the founding ancestor was the most renowned. Grand Empress Hong Tian, with her unparalleled divine talent, swept across entire eras. Even emperors who came after her lived under her shadow. As for Grand Emperor Sandao, though his fame was not as great as the other two, his attacks were vicious and unmatched. The undying flower still bloomed on the path before the true martial sacred ground, and many disciples instinctively chose to inherit his legacy because his combat style was simple and brutally effective. Thus, Grand Emperor Sandao was also widely celebrated. Only Grand Emperor Xin Xing had little recorded about him. After receiving the heaven's will, he rarely returned to the sect. He wandered the world, measuring every inch of land with his own steps. That was the path he walked. Su Zimo hadn't expected that even after entering the 9 heavens, Grand Emperor Xin Xing was still following his own Tao. The road was long, accompanied only by loneliness and solitude. He truly possessed iron will. "Then what about you, Senior Sandao? Are you also walking your own road?" Su Zimo asked with a smile. "My whole life, I've walked with my blade. In death, I'll rest with it as well," Grandpa Dao said, also smiling. "Along the way, I encountered countless saintesses and heavenly palace fairies, yet none of them could halt my steps. Only this blade followed me through it all." His voice carried a faint sigh. At his age, he no longer cared for appearances. He had reached the twilight of life, like a candle nearly burned out. After chatting for a while longer, Su Zimo departed. Xiaonan pushed his wheelchair. On the way, she asked with reluctance, "Do we really have to leave the true martial sacred ground?" "Why not?" Su Zimo replied. "I grew up here since childhood. I can't help but feel attached," she said softly. "We'll be back," Su Zimo said with a smile. "We're only going to handle some matters, kill a few people. Afterward, everything will return to what it should be. The only difference is that the true martial sacred ground will rule absolute God heaven." His last words were spoken so quietly that Xiaonan could barely hear them. As she pushed him forward, Su Zimo asked, "What did Sect Master Wang say?" "The Sect Master has already informed all elders and disciples," she explained. "We should have an answer soon." "Then we'll wait," Su Zimo said. "In the meantime, take me to see the sect's monument." The true martial monument recorded those who had made great contributions to the sect. But due to the sect's destruction, no one had visited for a long time. The last name recorded was from 500 years ago. Xiaonan didn't ask further. She assumed Su Zimo simply wanted to revisit old places, so she quietly pushed him toward the monument. It took them over 10 minutes. Though the sect had once been destroyed, the land was vast. Eventually, they reached the half-ruined monument grounds. There were 300 monuments in total, each commemorating the most distinguished ancestors since the founding of the sect. Sadly, most had been destroyed. Only 5 or 6 remained intact. The rest were rubble and broken stone. One monument read, Martial Origin Ancestor, a 3,000-year elder of the true martial sacred ground. Once slew 7 saint sovereigns and helped suppress the Yao rebellion. Each monument towered dozens of meters high, with the life deeds of its subject carved below. Su Zimo read them one by one. Most were broken in half or missing large sections. Young master, what are you looking for? Xiaoanan asked. The monument of your founding ancestor, the true martial saint sovereign. Su Zimo replied with a smile. But the ancestor's monument shattered long ago, Xiaoanan said regretfully. Do you know where it once stood? He asked. It was the first monument right in the innermost area. Easy to recognize, she answered. She pushed him to the deepest part, where they found a completely intact monument. Its surface was forged from black magic stone, and faint characters were still visible, radiating dense martial intent. The monument of the founding ancestor, the true martial saint sovereign. He led the true martial sacred ground through a full 60-year cycle and raised it to its peak. Su Zimo silently read the inscription. Xiaoanan, shocked, exclaimed, This wasn't the ancestor's monument destroyed ages ago? How is it suddenly here again? Who restored it? If a monument falls, it can be raised again. And if a person dies, they can also return, Su Zimo said quietly, offering no explanation. Then he added, Place your hand on the stone. Xiaoanan hesitated for only a moment before obeying. The instant her hand touched the monument, a blinding sword glow erupted, slicing open the surrounding void. A deep vortex formed on the surface of the stone. Su Zimo reached into it and retrieved a sword, tossing it to her. What is this? Xiaoanan asked, catching it in a panic. The moment the sword touched her palm, she felt it resonate with her blood. Her true martial sword physique rioted within her, sword intent bursting uncontrollably. The founding ancestor's companion sword, Su Zimo said with a smile. You can simply call it the true martial sword. The ancestor's sword? How could it be here? She stammered. Because he left it for you, Su Zimo replied. Left it for me? But why? She asked, confused. Su Zimo shot her a glance but did not answer. Instead, he said, Keep it. It's rightfully yours. Even if I didn't give it to you, that old man would have handed it over eventually. I'm just getting ahead of him. Xiaoanan didn't understand his meaning. She only felt that old ancestors always spoke in circles. Still, she happily accepted the sword and thanked him repeatedly. Just then, Wang Hengji descended from the distance. Enough. It seems it's time for us to leave. There's nothing left to linger for here. Su Zimo turned his head. In the distance, Wang Hengji was already shouting, Ancestor! Ancestor! What's the panic? Has another enemy come to kill us? Su Zimo asked. No, Wang Hengji said, shaking his head. It's the Sage Heaven God Empire. They've sent people here. What would the Sage Heaven God Empire send people for? Su Zimo asked, puzzled. Ancestor, you may not know, Wang Hengji explained. Earlier, when Ocean Dragon Prince demanded a protection tribute from us, we considered using the Thousand Thought Tome to request aid from the Sage Heaven God Empire. But after sending the message, they never responded. He continued, back when the true martial sacred ground was at its peak, the Sage Heaven God Empire was on good terms with us, practically our subordinate force. But over the years, they cut ties. So this time, I'm not sure if they come as allies or enemies. If you're unsure, just ask them, Su Zimo said with some irritation. If you expect me to answer everything, what do we need a sect master for? Ancestor, I didn't mean it like that, Wang Hengji said quickly. It's just, the Sage Heaven God Empire sent more than 10 people. Their leader is the Wheel Sun National Preceptor. They say he's at the peak of the God Meridian realm, half a step into the Grand Emperor realm. Without you at my side, I don't dare raise my voice. So what? Here in the true martial sacred ground, what could they possibly do? Su Zimo asked. That's not certain, Wang Hengji said helplessly. The prestige of our sect has long vanished. No one takes us seriously anymore. Fine. I'll go with you and take a look, Su Zimo said. With you there, even if you do nothing, I'll at least have some confidence, Wang Hengji said with relief. Being sect master had been humiliating. Felt like anyone could bully him. Worse, he hadn't dared fight back. After all, he'd rebuilt the sect with great difficulty. He couldn't bear to see it destroyed again. Weak as it was, it still existed. And as long as it existed, there was hope. On the way, Su Zimo asked, Anin should have told you already, the sect is leaving this place. How are the arrangements coming along? I've already informed everyone. We're taking an attitude of voluntary participation. The sect has 53,000 disciples in total. 300 are willing to come along. As for the 17 Grand Elders, only 6 are willing to leave together. Hearing this, Su Zimo was slightly surprised. There were more disciples than he expected, and only 6 elders willing to follow. But after a moment he understood. The current elders of the true martial sacred ground were essentially here to retire. Only 5 or 6 truly cared about rebuilding the sect. Still, this was fine. It helped reveal who was loyal. He wasn't in a hurry. He let Xiao Anin push his wheelchair slowly. If the Sage Heaven envoys had to wait, they would simply wait. After more than 10 minutes, Su Zimo asked, Where are they? In the main hall, Wang Hengji answered. Find another hall, Su Zimo said. Have them come to me. If they come to the true martial sacred ground, there's no reason I should go to them. Wang Hengji could tell Su Zimo was putting on airs. But he was the ancestor, there was nothing to be done. He vacated the sect's council hall, settled Su Zimo there, and rushed off to summon the people from the Sage Heaven God Empire. Young master, won't this offend the Sage Heaven God Empire? Xiao Anin asked worriedly. In her understanding, the Sage Heaven God Empire was one of the major powers of the Absolute God Heaven, on equal footing with the ancient Dragon God Empire. Meanwhile, the true martial sacred ground was a tiny, half-ruined force struggling to survive long after its former glory. Don't worry about so-called etiquette, Su Zimo replied. Etiquette is for friends. With everyone else, what matters isn't manners, it's strength. When your fist is big enough, nothing is a problem. Look at the true martial sacred ground. At its peak, it made the Sage Heaven God Empire bend the knee, not because of propriety. And now, when others need us however they like, is it because we lack etiquette? Xiao Anin nodded. It made sense. Power was the only real truth. While they were talking, the group from the Sage Heaven God Empire arrived. Before they even entered, complaints were already sounding. What ancestor? Your true martial sacred ground still has an ancestor? What a joke. When there's no tiger in the mountain, the monkeys call themselves king. Anyone can claim to be an ancestor, apparently. We came to support the true martial sacred ground out of old friendship, and this is the attitude we get? Truly ungrateful. Judging by the voices, they were all from the younger generation. When more than 10 figures entered, Xiao Anin could see clearly. At the front stood the Wheelsun National Preceptor, and behind him were a group of well-dressed young men and women. The preceptor himself had remained quiet on the way in, but he had not stopped his followers' ridicule, a clear indication of his displeasure. The moment he entered the hall, the Wheelsun Preceptor's gaze locked onto Su Zimo, a young man seated in a wheelchair. His eyes suddenly blazed like 2 suns, radiating piercing light, as though trying to see through Su Zimo entirely. Su Zimo lifted his head slightly. In his eyes, a faint blade light flashed. In an instant, the twin suns shattered. The light collapsed. The Wheelsun Preceptor let out a cry, staggering so badly he nearly fell. Master, what happened? The youths behind him asked in alarm. Silence, he snapped, scolding his own group harshly. Then he turned around, forcing a smile. May I ask if this is the true martial sacred ground's ancestor? His face was smiling, but inside he was chilled. His eyes still throbbed with pain from that blade strike. If the youth had harbored killing intent, his very soul might have been destroyed. Good. You feel pain, that means you understand fear, Suzumo said. I am the imperial ancestor of the true martial sacred ground. It seems you people have some complaints about me? No complaints at all, the Wheel Sun Preceptor said hastily, glaring at the disciples who still didn't understand the situation and looked like they wanted to speak. Suzumo smiled faintly. I heard you came to support our true martial sacred ground? The true martial sacred ground and the Sage Heaven God Empire share old ties, the Preceptor said quickly. So as soon as we received your request for help, we hurried here. Upon hearing this, Suzumo let out a cold laugh. National Preceptor Wheel Sun, do you really think I'm easy to fool? Suzumo said calmly. Look at the shrimp soldiers and crab generals behind you. Are these the people you brought as support? Just them? What support can they possibly provide? Hearing this, the disciples behind Wheel Sun felt thoroughly insulted. What do you mean? We traveled millions of miles. Even if our gifts are simple, our sincerity is real. Exactly. Even if you're the ancestor of the true martial sacred ground, is it wrong for us to help you? You're really here to help us? Suzumo was not angry. He simply asked, Ancestor, if there's anything you need, just say the word. Wheel Sun replied. Perfect. We're leaving shortly to destroy the ancient dragon god empire. You'll come with me, Suzumo said. The smiles on their faces froze instantly. Ancestor, you do know how to joke. Wheel Sun forced a laugh. Joking? You believe I'm joking? Suzumo looked at him serenely. Wheel Sun's smile vanished. He then said, It's not that I look down on the true martial sacred ground, but in your current state, how do you plan to destroy the ancient dragon god empire? I really can't imagine it. I alone can wipe out the entire ancient dragon god empire with a flick of my finger. What's so difficult about that? Suzumo said without concern. Wheel Sun and his disciples clearly didn't believe it. The strength of the ancient dragon god empire was something only another divine nation could fully understand. If Suzumo could truly annihilate the ancient dragon god empire with a flick of his finger, then wouldn't that mean he could destroy the Sage Heaven god empire just as easily? Wheel Sun could not accept that. After all, they had always carried a sense of superiority over the true martial sacred ground, and divine nation's natural arrogance toward a lower one. If the sect truly returned to its former glory, they were the ones who wouldn't be able to adapt. I admit this ancestor is strong, Wheel Sun said, but the ancient dragon god empire is equally powerful. They have more than just multiple grand emperors. They're also allied with the Azure Green Dragon race. Among the divine nations of the absolute god heaven, the ancient dragon god empire ranks in the top 3. To be precise, even their own Sage Heaven god empire might not be a match for the ancient dragon god empire. Suzumo couldn't be bothered to argue. He simply said, Since you've come to the true martial sacred ground, what I say goes. If you listen, you live. If you don't, I don't mind erasing you. As for whatever little schemes you brought here, I'm too lazy to care. You dare kill us? Aren't you afraid of our Sage Heaven God Empire's retaliation? You've already offended the ancient dragon God Empire. Do you plan to offend 2 divine nations at once? One disciple said arrogantly. He believed that if Suzumo had any sense, he wouldn't dare harm them. But clearly he was mistaken. The moment his words fell, Suzumo merely cast a glance at him. Space twisted violently, and before the disciple could even scream, the distorted void shredded him to pieces. Looks like I've been a little too patient lately, Suzumo said quietly. You killed him. Wheel Sun's expression changed drastically. Do you want to follow him? Suzumo asked. Wheel Sun fell silent instantly. The row of disciples who had been so loud earlier all lowered their heads, too afraid to speak. This man truly dared to kill, and didn't fear offending their empire. That was what terrified them most. Originally, Wheel Sun had brought them here to gain experience and, incidentally, flaunt their presence a bit within the true martial sacred ground. They had never expected to run into a slaughter god. Su Zimo waved his hand dismissively. Leave. We set out at dawn. As ancestor commands, Wang Hengji said quickly. The members of the Sage Heaven God Empire let out a quiet sigh of relief and hurried away. The great hall was far too oppressive. Once everyone had left, Su Zimo closed his eyes. If someone could look inside his body, they would see a minuscule tower phantom forming in his mind, shaped exactly like the true Martial Tribulation Tower, only much smaller. Most of the tower remained ethereal, with only the bottom layer solid. Su Zimo seemed to sink into a special state as time slowly passed. Outside the true martial sacred ground, Wheel Sun and his disciples were placed in a courtyard arranged by Wang Hengji. During this time, Wheel Sun behaved with great politeness, which gave Wang Hengji a sense of accomplishment for the first time. In the past, no one had taken him seriously. After Wang Hengji left, the disciples finally started complaining. National Preceptor, the true martial sacred ground, has gotten way too arrogant. He killed senior brother. Are we just going to let that go? Their outrage flared, but Wheel Sun was far calmer. Otherwise what? You plan to avenge him? He asked. We're definitely no match for him, but our Sage Heaven God Empire has countless cultivators. Are we supposed to fear a fallen sex ancestor? A disciple muttered. Wheel Sun snorted. What's the hurry? Didn't he say he's going to destroy the ancient dragon god empire? He was just bragging in front of us, another disciple said. Then we'll follow them and see if he really dares to go, Wheel Sun said. If he destroys the ancient dragon god empire, you should know what that means. If he dies there instead, then we won't need to lift a finger. National Preceptor, you're truly far-sighted. The disciples immediately flattered. Enough. Stay quiet these days. Don't get yourselves killed for nothing. This man looks dangerously unpredictable, Wheel Sun warned. The night passed quickly. When the final trace of darkness faded at dawn, Su Zimo exhaled a long breath of black air and slowly opened his eyes. Wang Hengji had already gathered all disciples and elders at the sect gate. The people from the Sage Heaven God Empire were also waiting nearby. Xiaonan pushed Su Zimo forward as they approached. Just then, someone noticed something. The true Martial Tribulation Tower was gone. It had always stood tall in the north of the sect, visible at a glance. Now, with it missing, the northern horizon looked strangely empty. Wang Hengji knew immediately that its disappearance must have something to do with Su Zimo. Before this, Su Zimo had been acknowledged by the true Martial Tribulation Tower. According to the ancestors' teachings, he could fully control the tower. But for safety, Wang Hengji still asked, when he saw Xiaonan pushing Su Zimo over, ancestor, the tower has disappeared. Let's go, Su Zimo said calmly, giving him a single glance. The meaning was obvious. I know, I just don't feel like explaining it to you. Wang Hengji gave an awkward smile, then asked, should I call Grandpa Dao to join us? He's old now. I'm afraid his body might not handle traveling far. No need. Since the Tribulation Tower is gone, he left long ago, Su Zimo said with a wave of his hand. Wang Hengji was puzzled, but he asked no further. He finally understood. Say too much and you irritate the ancestor. Better to be a silent sect master who just follows along. Not a bad deal. Su Zimo glanced at the people of the Sage Heaven God Empire but didn't bother acknowledging them. Instead, he said, find me a stretcher. This wheelchair is uncomfortable. Hearing this, Wang Hengji hurried to prepare a stretcher. For disciples lifted Su Zimo, carrying him slowly toward the ancient Dragon God Empire. The capital of the ancient Dragon God Empire was Ancient Dragon City, not far from the true martial sacred ground. Since the sect had originally been situated within ancient dragon territory, Su Zimo was in no hurry, and none of them dared to rush him. The group walked unhurriedly for a month. During that time, Su Zimo began tempering the disciples. One day, they passed a wide valley filled with dense blue mist, within which countless poisonous snakes' eyes gleamed. This was Serpent Venom Valley. Su Zimo threw the disciples in and ordered them to fight the snakes to the death. Every time a disciple neared death, Su Zimo would pull them out, heal them completely, and toss them back in. Another day, they passed a river inhabited by a tribe of man-eating fish demons. Su Zimo made the disciples fight the entire tribe underwater. They ended up covered in wounds, not a single spot left uninjured. This hellish training left the people of the Sage Heaven God Empire pale with fear and speechless. This wasn't cultivating, it was torture. But despite the suffering, the disciples were thrilled by their rapid progress. Their cultivation realms soared daily. And thinking about it, how often could one meet a powerhouse who could heal all injuries instantly and let them fight without fear of death? It was a rare opportunity. The disciples of the true martial sacred ground had never had such conditions. Now that they had Su Zimo, they became serious. At first some complained, but later they became like masochists, uncomfortable if they weren't being beaten half to death. Some even voluntarily asked Su Zimo to increase the intensity. Day after day passed. During the journey, Su Zimo found Willow Ancestor. He was sealed inside a coffin, preserving the little life he had left, and the disciples had been carrying the coffin the entire way. Su Zimo opened it and looked at the old ancestor inside. Willow's seniority was mid-range within the sect. He had not met the oldest of the old ancestors, but he knew most of the rest. Unlike Su Zimo, he assumed Su Zimo was from the same era as his own master, Saint Sovereign Sandao. "You want to live?" Su Zimo asked directly. "If I had a choice, who would choose death?" Willow said with a bitter smile. "You contributed greatly to the rebuilding of the true martial sacred ground," Su Zimo said. "My master was kind to me. This was my duty," Willow sighed. "It's a pity I won't live to see the sect rise again." "You will," Su Zimo said. "In recognition of your service, I can extend your life." "It's useless. I've taken too many life-extending medicines. My body developed resistance long ago." "Forget about me," Willow said, shaking his head. Su Zimo didn't respond. Instead, he took out a leaf from the Tree of Life. The moment its vibrant green surface released a surge of life force, Willow froze, stunned, his whole body trembling with emotion. This is a leaf of life," Su Zimo said. "Even with your resistance, it can still extend your life by 100,000 years. 100,000. National Preceptor Wheelsun stood dumbfounded. Life-extending treasures were priceless. Something that added even 1,000 years was already heaven-defying. But 100,000 years? He had never seen such a thing, never even heard of one. "This, ancestor, this is for me?" Willow asked, dazed as if dreaming. When Su Zimo nodded, Willow's hands trembled as he accepted the leaf. "Thank you, ancestor, for granting me new life." He immediately knelt. "Stand," Su Zimo said with a wave. "Absorb the leaf soon. You can finally escape that pitch-dark coffin." Willow nodded repeatedly and hurried aside to begin cultivating. After he left, Wheelsun quickly approached with a flattering smile. "Ancestor, do you have more of those leaves?" "A whole tree full." "Why?" Su Zimo replied. "Could you bestow one upon me?" Wheelsun asked. Even he felt embarrassed, shamelessly asking for such a treasure. But 100,000 years of life was too tempting. Su Zimo didn't answer. He just looked at him with a faint smile. Wheelsun's face reddened. Unwilling to give up, he said, "What would you like in return? If it's within my ability, I'll agree. To me, the leaf is worthless. Yet I simply don't want to give one to you. I'm stubborn like that." "What now? Going to cry?" Su Zimo said. Wheelsun's expression darkened. The embarrassment felt like humiliation. But he didn't dare argue and only said, "In that case, I won't trouble you further." Su Zimo glanced at him coldly and said nothing more. Time was long, and the Sage Heaven God Empire was nothing but a group of clownish fools, irrelevant to his true goals. Finally, after half a month of traveling, Su Zimo led the true martial sacred ground to ancient Dragon City, capital of the ancient Dragon God Empire. Ancient Dragon City had long been famed as the largest city in the region, unmatched in scale. Su Zimo looked at a few disciples and instructed, "Go issue a battle challenge." Challenge? To who? A disciple asked, confused.